Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to this webinar. Hopefully everyone can hear me. We've got the question box open, so any questions you've got throughout the session, please do sort of let me know and we will answer those as we go. So, as you can hopefully see on the screen, this is the Kickstart webinar for AF4 investment planning. Let's have a look at what it's all about. What are we going to cover in this webinar is a little bit about BTS, who we are. So you get to know the company that is presenting this webinar, what the AF4 exam is actually like, and pass rates, examiner feedback. Have a look at how tricky is this particular one. Specifically, why it can be such a challenge. Hopefully when we look at the pass rates, you'll see why it is a challenge, but what makes it such a difficult exam. And then how we can help you in structuring your revision plan. So getting an idea of how do you start? How do you get good at AF4 and have success at this particular exam? So, who are BTS? Well, first and foremost, our captains. We've got our two directors, Jeff and Louisa. Between them, they have got over 70 years experience within financial services. Jeff's main thing is sort of taxation wise. Louisa absolutely adores pensions, and together they have built up this business. Not on their own, they have a great team behind them, and here are some of the people who make the whole of BTS actually work. So you've got Alex, who sort of heads up the business support, and a whole team behind her, checking in that everything is going smoothly and everything else. Had a query about the recording. The recording will be shared later. So if you do have to leave, then do check in on that later. That will be published on the website. Okay, so this team, not only the team itself, there is also BTS associates, myself being one of them, and we've got a couple of others, Marisha and Rhoda, who also you may have seen quite frequently as you've passed through perhaps your RO exams with BTS's help. So huge delivery of workshops, writing materials, all of those sort of things. And the fact is that we specialise in the subjects that we actually have exam passes in. So we only train those sort of subjects that we know about. So we know what you're going through. We know what the experience is like to pass these exams. I myself, who've written a lot of the AF4 materials, I've got over 500 points now with the CII. So I have been in your shoes. I have very much sat pretty much every exam out there to really understand what it's like and how these exams go. So moving on then, what is it that BTS do? Hopefully you've heard about us, perhaps you've dealt with us in regards to your RO exams, and that's certainly something that BTS have very much become the exam experts at. Solid background in L&D and really enhanced because of that team experience. We sit these exams, we know at level 4 and level 6 what it is that you're going to do. So having sat them and having supported over 10,000 students now throughout all the RO exams, and from 2022 moving into that space of the AF exams as well, with their own study guides and study plans. And we also get close to those people who are sitting them on a regular basis as well, our students. We get regular feedback about the exams, and we review every single exam coming out, the actual exam guides, as to exactly what went on with it, and look very closely at examiners' feedback. Award-winning, so you're probably here because you know all about us. If you don't, please do obviously click in on LinkedIn and look at what we do, because we are very much specialists in the field. Let's zone in a bit more on the AF4 exam. So it might be that you've already done all your RO exams, you've got your diploma, and thinking, is this the next step? Or you may even have done some of your chartered exams. AF4 is a tricky one. let's have a little look about it. One of the big things with the AF4 exam is it's very different to all of the other ones, is because you are not going to be using a computer. Okay, it is actually the only exam left that is absolutely handwritten. So it is get that pen out. If you're anything like myself, we've kind of lost the art of writing. And when you've got to do it for 3 hours, your hand tends to cramp. We're just not used to it. So one thing I would suggest whilst you're starting to actually study for this exam is get used to writing notes in pen and paper. Used to holding that pen again and not typing all your answers or using sort of interactive technology. So handwritten, cramping hands, got to get practiced at writing. The next is, of course, it's an investment exam. So this is all about the investments, the understanding of those investments and the application. So it's not just regurgitating knowledge or trying to spot an answer from an A, B, C, D answer. It is understanding the whole world of investments out there, not just necessarily the ISAs or the bonds you may have on your own remit within your own companies. It's the whole world of investments. And not only what they are and the actual knowledge, but how do you apply them to a client base? So really understanding a very wide syllabus is important. It's then looking at the fact that it's not just the knowledge you need. This is about applying it. Critical evaluation and analysis of how those work. So the maths behind things, not just generally, you can put 20 grand into an ISA, but what's all the maths that goes on behind fund selection? Do you understand company accounts and the amount of data that you can get from those? So absolutely critically evaluating and putting that knowledge across is key. A big area, we've got loads of question marks here. And this is one of the key ones we find at a lot of the AF levels and even sort of the RO6 levels, where they are those written exams, not your multi-choices. You've got to answer the question that the examiner is actually asking. That's kind of a common reason why a lot of people fail at these written style exams. They've got in their heads what questions they want to answer, but are they answering the ones the examiner actually posed? So reading that question, understanding what that question actually means, then answering that one very logically, very precisely, very concisely, getting that knowledge across and applying it. Very important. As is a good spread of answers. Often you'll get people coming back from this exam not having passed, and when they look and review what they put down for any questions, they've kind of gone down a rabbit hole. They've gone on one particular track, perhaps something that was quite technical that they got, but have failed to mention all of the obvious stuff that went around that answer. So a wide spread of answers is generally what's needed. And our final one of who, it's case study specific. So exactly what is it that applies to that client? Just listing a whole load of information about the topic isn't going to get you the answers. It's what does that technical piece of information mean, and specifically for that client. Have you spotted the details in the case study there? Got a question here about, is AF4 positive marking? Yeah, absolutely it is positive marking. So you will get answers. I'll go through your script and look to give you those answers. You're not going to get marks taken away for incorrect answers. But what you do need to do is make sure that you are looking at the case study. Because effectively, if you're writing down answers that aren't applicable, you're just not going to get the marks and it's going to waste your time. So you definitely need to look closely at the case study and what is relevant to that client. Applying that knowledge is crucial at this level. So facing this exam, you may have kind of had other people taking this. You may just have done your RO2 thinking, I quite liked investments. So we're going to have a look at a couple of concepts about people approaching this exam. We're going to look firstly at that word of the street, what people are saying about it. What kind of queries have you got? What is it like? What's an AF4 like? After all, it is based on RO2 and you may have loved your investment planning exam. We're going to consider the pass rates on this and what that means in terms of your own preparation. And following those, we're really going to be looking at, well, why is it such a tricky exam? Why do people struggle to get through this particular subject? So starting with the things you might have heard about this exam. AF4, just like RO2, you've passed that, you liked that one. Should be all right, shouldn't it? Perhaps you deal with investments at work. You've got ISAs and perhaps some investment bonds and maybe some unit trusts that you deal with regularly. So if you're dealing with these investments at work, this is obviously a natural progression of your knowledge. How much harder can an advanced level exam be? After all, most of the base text is, of course, the RO2 syllabus, along with a bit of J10 as well, but that was the main thrust of the knowledge of this exam. So how much harder can it be? And of course, if you've passed your RO2, what else is there to learn? You should be able to easily step on this. Well, let's have a think about that. Let's bring on and look at the exam rates, exam pass rates. So we've got kind of the last 4 years up on the screen now. And as you can see, it's fluctuated a bit. We've gone all the way from 49 back in 2019, rose a bit, went down a bit in 21, back up to 57. But that does mean quite a lot of people are deferring their success on this exam. Now, the CAI recommend 150 hours of study for this one. Why? Well, effectively, if you're passing one of these exams, that's 30 points at the AF level, you need 120 points to be sort of get it at that level, to be getting the charter status, that advanced diploma status. So you're effectively doing at level 6 1/4 of a degree in this one exam. Hence the 150 hour study. Not sure how many of you went to university, but 150 hour study for 1/4 of a degree, don't underestimate it. A lot of people do defer their success here. So let's look at perhaps why that is. Going to look through some of the examiner feedback. When candidates have approached this exam, what are some of the trends that we have noticed on past exam papers? First of all, they're telling us that candidates had superficial knowledge that resulted in vague answers. That is just not going to cut it here. You can't just have sort of like overview of knowledge. It's got to be in depth. It is an enhanced exam, it's an advanced exam that you are going to need that extra knowledge for. Calculation questions. Now, anyone remembering back to RO2, you're probably thinking there were so many formula, didn't need them all at RO2, but you probably will at AF4. And rather than in AF, like when you were doing your ROs, you were sort of looking at one particular calculation in that question. It was very probably clear which formula to use. Here it's not, it's a case study. You need to determine which formula and use the right parts of it. So knowing those formulas is important because they did spot that candidates were using incorrect variables or incorrect formula. You're not going to get hints in the exam as to which ones to use. You're going to have to know how to apply them. Again, answers need to be aligned with the requirements of the question, focused and not generic. Something we picked up on earlier is that, just spouting a load of textbook answers is not going to get you the marks. It has got to be in relation to the case study that you're given. And of course, you're not given that case study until you open that exam paper on the day. So understanding what is important to that client, what makes it important, and focusing your answers on that client is absolutely crucial. Okay. What else? Lack of detail. So ties in with our first one, that superficial knowledge. It's not going to be enough. You've got to know the bells and whistles of every product and every kind of risk and how all the maths works. It's advanced level, it's higher level than both the R02 and the J10, which are the books that kind of underpin the knowledge part. So increase in expectations for your answers. Detailed answers, absolutely the way to go. Also, regurgitation of previous exam guides. Now, although there are tons of exam papers out there, and absolutely we would suggest that part of your practice is very much doing exam papers, just learning verbatim the actual answers from previous years, not generally going to help you. What the exam papers will do will understand, can I answer the kind of questions they're presenting? Can I give them the answers they're looking for? And do I know the subject matter underneath? Gaps in my knowledge. That's how the exam papers will help you. Trying to just memorize them isn't going to help. What you will start spotting as you cover more and more perhaps AF4 papers is actually there's such a wide syllabus, there's not even trends you can spot in this one. They could ask you about literally anything. So the key is to understand the level of answer that you need and the knowledge behind it, and then be able to apply it and make it relevant. And the final point was that you were not prepared. Candidates were not prepared for the exam and struggled with core areas of the syllabus. This is definitely not an exam you can wing. You can't just kind of turn up and have a go. I have spoken to some candidates who are like, well, I deal with investments at work. I know how much goes in an ISA. Can't be that hard, just like our voice on the street there. It really is. When they sort of start opening up, do you know about the sort of Macaulay duration and what impact that would have on your clients and their views? You've got to know the detail and be able to apply it most definitely for this one. So, first problem is, I've said there's 150 hours. It's a quarter of a degree. How do you get those hours in? Our days are busy. What is it that you'll need? Those of you who went to university, you obviously, yes, it was a lot of effort, but probably all you had to worry about was pretty much doing your degree and where you were meeting your mates later. Now that bottom picture, that work-life balance, you're trying to achieve the same sort of result, but there's a lot more going on than you had in student life, if you did do that phase. So it's very tricky to study advanced level exams. And that's why this exam particularly, people do defer their success, often multiple times. It is a tricky one. You've got to get the hours in, you've got to get the time in. Of course, 150 hours is a generic one. It might be that you need more. It might be that you need less. But it's certainly a significant investment in your time. So, where do people go wrong with this one? Common denominator, some of the main themes here. Firstly, is leaving revision too late. 150 hours is not something you sneak in a weekend. It's got to be something that's planned in. Last minute late revision on this one, it's just not going to work. You have to build in the time, which is why we're doing these Kickstart webinars, because now is the time to absolutely ramp it up to get in preparation for the autumn exam. Second area is poor technical knowledge. As the examiner's feedback said, candidates just didn't have the level of knowledge required. So R02, if you've got that, that's a great start. But there was probably bits in that you were kind of, well, that's not going to come up in the exam. And even the BTS guides, there's bits that we know just don't really appear at the RO level. Unfortunately, those pages you stuck together last time and ignored, you've got to go back to. In these kind of exams, they do come back again. You can't rely on just the basic knowledge. You do need to understand wider investment. What else? Poor question and answer techniques. So just as those of you who've done things like your RO6, it's a very different style. You've got to know what the CII is asking and what exactly they're looking for in your exam. How do they want it structured? If you don't have good technique, you can not get the marks because you're not making it clear that you actually know the stuff. And quite often it can be stating the blooming obvious. Those are the marks that people miss. They kind of try and zero in on the really technical. And in fact, a lot of the marks weren't actually technical. They were for stating the obvious, really spelling out the detail. So having that good question and answer experience, knowing those techniques, what is the examiner look for, that'll really help you in this exam. Another area that people sort of defer their success is relying on book learning. Okay, now obviously, we have got a study guide. We've got a great study guide with BTS for this subject. So you'll get loads of information from that book. However, what you need to be doing with your learning is looking a bit outwards as well. Listen to the news, read the financial papers. How does your learning now apply? That practice in turning just text on a document into real world, what does that mean? So when inflation rates are changing, when the Bank of England meets in a couple of weeks' time, what does that mean? What's the impact going to be throughout the infrastructure of investments? What decisions are fund managers going to make now or in the future based on changes? Seeing things go live will make approaching a case study far easier because you can see how this knowledge turns into real world scenarios. Then the final and probably the biggest reason people fail is I'll get around to it. I haven't really got a plan, but it should be fine. I'll do a few past papers, maybe. Again, 150 hours, you can't squeeze it in a weekend here. You do need a plan, and you don't need to do it in massive block sessions. You need regular, you need often, little and often, to build up that knowledge, to put it into practice, to be able to apply it to real world scenarios. Great news is we can help you with all of these parts. Getting that plan in place is the start of being able to get the time allocated, to understand the knowledge you need, to get the technique, and to be able to have time to put the book learning into real world dimensions. So let's have a look closer at all these areas. So lastminute.com on this one, it's not going to work. We've already seen that nigh on 50% of people are deferring success on this one. I think the only subject that's actually a worse pass rate is AF4, which is very technical again. So I know a busy lifestyle, time runs away from us. Revision is always the least exciting thing to put on your to-do list today. There's all sorts of other demands on your time, but you need to allocate it. If it's important, you need to put that time in. So it's not on the desirable list. It's, there's plenty, especially with this weather. We want to be out. We want to be enjoying the sunshine in the few days we get in the UK. But if you want to do this seriously, you've got to allocate the time and make it dedicated. Don't procrastinate. Don't put off getting started. When you move closer to the exam, you get less weeks. 150 hours divided by less weeks is always going to be more time needed. Start now, start early, then you can spread that load out and it becomes achievable. Okay? And again, easy to listen to that office expert. Oh, you've passed your diploma, you'll sail through these. Don't need to spend all that time. You really do. You really do need to allocate time to get on board with the learning on this particular subject. Knowledge. Okay, so syllabus gives us sort of an overview. These are some of the key highlights of the syllabus. It's the economic environment. Well, there's lots going on there that we can listen to on the news. You're going to need to understand direct investments, so your main asset classes. You're also going to need to look at all the different kinds of collective investments, not just the ones that are on the list within your own companies, but wider. What are they? And don't look for them to be called the names that you're used to. They might be described in other formats. You need to sort of recognise them from how they're being described in the case study. They're not going to make it easy for you to determine, is it one of those, is it one of these? You've got to be able to zero in and look at what kind of investment is yourself. Share performance. So this is something, if you've not done the J10, that's a feature really of the J10. It's very like RO2, but it gives you a lot more on analysing company and share performance. So looking at company accounts, what can you derive from that? How is that going to affect the fortunes of a company, perhaps wanting to issue shares or issue bonds? How would fund managers look at that? So a lot of the data that you might see in kind of the financial press, how does it come by that data? What is it? What does it mean? What's the impact on the economic environment, on the shares, on the investments, and the whole portfolio process? And then the portfolio construction, the measurement. So not just kind of, okay, yes, you can have different portfolios. What goes in? What's the maths behind that? What's the fund manager's view on how they use different types of techniques, different strategies? How do they work? What would you expect from them? How can they be measured? All of these sort of come into the system, and you've got to know across the board all of these areas. Again, not just memorizing facts, but being able to apply them. Taking those lists of formulas and understanding what they mean. What is the view of those sort of formulas in real life situations? How can you manipulate them? So yeah, it's getting your maths brain back out and practicing good old rearranging of formulas. Okay. Here I wanted to give you an example as well. So you might have, for instance, to calculate a ratio on a share, but they're not going to make it easy. They're not going to give it to you against a formula you might know. You might need more than one formula. So we've got an example of a price earnings ratio. For those that don't know, this is one of the easiest ones because it literally tells you the calculation within the name of the actual ratio. It's price divided by earnings. So what are the earnings per share? Those are the things you need. So you need the share price, you need the earnings per share. But the case study may not include both those things. Perhaps it won't include the earnings per share value. So you've got to think, okay, well, how do I calculate an earnings per share? I've got to look at what the net profit is. I've got to look at how many ordinary shares there are. So you might need to do effectively double calculations to work out the one thing that actually the question wanted. That understanding of how the different relationships between the ratios exist, how to turn them round, how to use data and pull it out to get what you want, that takes practice. Just memorizing the formula isn't necessarily going to help. You've got to be able to drag out the information from the case study and see how it applies. Okay. Question and answer techniques. Of course, this is again one of those examples where the answer is not in front of you. You have in this case, a blank piece of paper. It's not even a blank screen. So you've got a blank piece of paper and you're expected to just come out with all the answers without really any prompts. You've got to interpret the questions correctly. And as we've said, that understanding what they're asking is a key skill and one that you really need practice at in this level. Ensuring you're answering the question that the examiner is asking, not the one you made up in your head, not the one you know how to answer because you've tried that one. You've got to align the question and the answer. And also, they won't just go out, we're talking about an investment bond here, or this is a fixed interest investment. They'll often perhaps use a title that you're not familiar with, a way of describing it. And you've got to kind of work out, well, what is that? And then which rules are then going to apply? Again, they're going to perhaps hide that within the text. I'm going to give you an example they had in a paper a few years ago, that because they didn't describe it in the way that students were expecting, people did really badly on. And that was one back from April 15. And they described that Phil was purchasing organic food boxes. Probably starting to think, what's this got to do with investment? He's going to the local market. And it even says, the farmers are trying to raise finance. They've got a coupon paid. They're going to get an organic food box valued at £20 for every 2,500 invested. So most people that approached this exam started to panic, thinking, what on earth have organic food boxes and farmers got to do with my investments? They gave you little hints in the word things like coupon, bond issue. Yes, it wasn't getting physical money back, but this is a fixed interest investment. You invest something, you get a return in the way of a coupon. In this case, monthly, rather than perhaps the 6 monthly you might have been associating with a fixed interest investment. So questions were really badly answered when all they wanted was the fact that it's a fixed interest investment. Apply your knowledge. The coupon wasn't a standard pound one. It was a crate of food. Still a fixed interest investment. So spotting what it is, even if it's disguised like it was here, is absolutely essential to then applying the knowledge you already know about fixed interest investments and the risks and the returns available. But looking wider, the fact it is just the local farmers. We're not looking at a bond issue from a well-known supermarket. So applying that as a real-world structure to something that was a little bit hidden. Okay. Again, I've said that book learning, that's great. That will provide you a firm foundation, but look outwards. Keep abreast of current events. What is happening around the world? How is it impacting on individuals, companies, investments, the decisions that go on in portfolios? September 2022 exam highlighted exactly that. They had a question that was identify 5 main economic factors that may result in an increase in interest rates. Well, what exactly are we experiencing right now? The examiners commented that those students who could refer to current world events were the ones who got the best marks here. So yes, the book provides you with loads, but look out. How does it apply to real world? What is happening? How is that impacting? Okay. Plan. So this, as we've said, is most definitely not a wing it one. You've got to have a plan. You've got to be able to fit that in, even when you don't want to, even when the weather's gorgeous out there and you'd rather be doing anything but studying on a beautiful weekend. 150-hour study. The later you leave it, the harder it is to achieve. You're giving yourself a mountain to climb rather than a steady-paced walk. Study plan, stick to it. Think of the other things that you wouldn't cancel out of your diary. This needs to be one of them if you're serious about passing. A little bit, every day, every week, consistently. That's the way you're going to get this exam. Being able to absorb the knowledge, practice it, and reflect on it in the real world. Little and often, lots of practice. Getting the knowledge, getting the technique, hand in hand. So absolutely, you need that study plan. How can BTS help? We can absolutely do that. Point you on the right path. Hopefully, you've understood that this is one you need to get started with. Well, what should we be doing? Point 1 is most definitely join the BTS Career Zone if you haven't already. I'm going to go over what's in there and why you should in a moment. Work through the study guide. As is terrific. I know, I wrote a lot of it. So that is a great place to again start to get that knowledge, to have exam style questions, to really focus in, and it gives you, manageable chunks that you can go through. Practice. There's lots within the guide. There's lots of other exam papers out there. You can download them off the CII site. At BTS, we've got a bank of them. So again, just contact us if you need more practice exam questions. Workshop. There will be, closer to the event, a 2-day workshop. Dates of that are already live on the BTS site. So that again will give you 2 days where you can be in a group environment and ask questions and really get into the bottom of these bits that perhaps you're struggling with. Different people might be struggling with different things, but having a group environment at that last stage really does provide a lot of support to get you through that exam, because you can hear ways of people describing things. They think, oh yeah, I didn't quite get that, but that now makes sense. And then more practice. Lots of practice exam questions. Have you got your technique? Have you got the kind of knowledge that you're going to need? So our first one was very much signing up to the Career Zone if you're not already there. What is there is loads. There are webinars like this one will land here, there, if you need to see the recording. There is a forum where you can chat with other students approaching the same topic as you, exchanging questions, helping others with answers, getting a real sort of community spirit outside of perhaps your own organisation with other people absolutely facing this exam. Top tips. Equally, there's additional technical knowledge there, other support. Equally, obviously, BTS and the moderator, so we can kind of put our oar in every now and again and sort of like give you other bits of gems and insights on that forum. One of the absolute blinding pieces of information on that particular Career Zone, though, once you sign up, is we have an ideal example study plan. What should you be doing in week 1? What should you be doing in week 2? What should you be doing throughout? Where should you be? Appreciating you've all got sort of like, you may need to tailor it to your own circumstances to where you can fit things in, but it gives you a starter for 10. So rather than that blank piece of paper, okay, where do I start? We've done that hard work for you. You've got an example study plan, and that will try and keep you on track with that little and often, keeping it all coming together. So absolutely, once you've finished this webinar, if you're not already signed up, get yourself signed up. The other great thing is it's actually free to sign up as well. So it's not even costing you anything to get these great resources of that forum, those study plans. Okay. Technical knowledge, you've got to ensure it's right there, it's tip top. Okay. You need to, if you've done your RO2, if you've done J10, you need to make sure that's nice and fresh. All that knowledge hasn't kind of gone into an archive. It's not covered in all the cobwebs in the corner of your room. You've got that base knowledge. It is secure. You've looked at the full syllabus area and incorporate all of that part. So again, if you've not done J10, and I know a lot of people perhaps have just done their ROs, it's that company account part. That will be kind of the add-on part to get you that J10. And whilst you're doing it, J10 is a multi-choice exam. It's another 20 points at diploma level. Can help boost your scores if you're looking to fill in gaps. So whilst you are studying, it's another great use of your time to catch that one as well. Exam style questions, applying your knowledge to practice case study based questions. Really important. And of course, tips and tools as you go, little mnemonics, little ways of rearranging formulas, practicing all that stuff you thought you'd left behind back in GCSE maths, all comes back to bother you at this point. So all of that good stuff, things like BODMAS, if any of you are like me are helping out GCSE students, my daughter's going through at the moment, and all that rearranging stuff, you're like, I've got that in that guide. So the study guide we see as an absolutely essential part of this process, giving you that uplift to your current skills to really focus in on what you need at this advanced level. Okay. So forum, study guide, start of your plan. Past papers, again, these are absolutely essential. So we've got the basic answering techniques. You've got to practice, practice, practice. Not regurgitate answers, but practice. Read the examiner's reports. As well, a lot of people sort of flick over those at the start of exam guides, thinking, I just want to get to the questions. But what you'll find is real insight in those examiners' reports about what people did well on, what they were disappointed in candidates for. Especially with recent papers, you'll find that if they didn't like what the candidates were doing in that one, it makes it more likely that's coming back to us again. So if your knowledge isn't secure in those areas the examiner said, we weren't really happy with this, then absolutely up your game in those areas. So look at what they're expecting, what do they get? Sit the past papers, exam conditions, write for 3 hours, get used to it. Because it really does, you come out of your exam and you can virtually not hold your pen anymore. In fact, after your exam, I would suggest you find yourself a coffee shop to kind of, get your hands back to being able to drive or do anything again. Exam conditions. Again, use the calculator you're going to take in. Get that scientific calculator, the one you're going to use. Don't use your iPhone or anything else that will be banned. You need to be used to where all the buttons are. So that's not something going to trip you up on the day. Then when you're marking them, be really strict. If that point is not in that exam guide, do not give yourself a mark for it. See what was the real, perhaps easy marks you threw away by not stating the obvious, which is what a lot of people miss out on. So what are you doing well? What are you not? Where do you need to up your game? Get that technical knowledge on point. Have you missed some sort of recent changes? I know sort of we've had a number of budgets over sort of the last tax year, and obviously now another budget coming into the new tax year, which is what the exam will be based in the autumn. Have you caught up with all those? Do you understand all the rules and how they impact? Also, common question types, common answers. What are they expecting when they throw out a certain style of question? Can you get the maximum marks? You don't need 100%. That would be lovely, but that is highly unlikely. You need 88 out of 160, 55% pass mark. That's what you need to aim for. Ideally a little bit higher than that to give yourself a bit of buffer, but you don't need every single question. What you do need to do is, for those that you really know, is to get all the maximum marks you absolutely can. So past papers, absolutely for this. Okay, last couple of weeks, it's all about, the time you've got. I appreciate, we've still got our nearest and dearest. We may have work. Perhaps you want to take some time off work in those last few critical weeks. AF4 is something by this point, when you're getting close to the exam, you're literally dreaming about. You're checking your technical knowledge, you're checking your application, you're reading the quality of papers, we're watching the news, we're thinking about, how do I apply some of these techniques? If I have a case study about this, how would it affect them? What do interest rates do? How is it affecting the company? How is it affecting share prices? What about portfolio construction? All of this should be going through your mind at that time. And yet, obviously, talk to the people around you. Make them understand what you're going through and give you that sort of space that you need to be able to sort of study for these final parts. Okay, so coming to sort of the end of the question and answer. Obviously, if you've got any more questions, more than happy to take them. But some of the key things to remember with AF4, it's a written exam. There is absolutely no remote sittings because it's not even computer based. So this is very much a go into your test centre type exam and sit at a desk on your own with your bottle of water and write for 3 hours. Practice that writing. Start writing your shopping lists out on a piece of paper rather than type them up on a note on your phone. You need to practice because we're just not used to it. Get yourself a really comfortable pen too, perhaps one with a nice squidgy bit. Things like that. Concentrate on those elements that are going to make your success even more. Visit the CII website. There's exam guidance. There's how you sort of book exams. All of that is in there. And obviously you can contact sort of customer service to understand sort of where you are on your own program. So we've got sort of 15 minutes left overall of the whole webinar. Really down to yourself in terms of sort of question time. Is there any other questions you want me to go over about approaching AF4, what's involved in it, or anything about sort of approaching your advanced level studies? So if you want to sort of type anything into the question and answer box, more than happy to take those. Okay. The BTS workshop, does it include the study guide? I believe it is separate part to the workshop. So that was a question about, does the workshop include the study guide? They are separate because you need to have studied the study guide completely before you even try and get towards the workshop. How many weeks in advance do you recommend starting? I would absolutely recommend you start pretty much now. You want a good sort of 3-4 months at least to kind of build yourself up towards an AF qualification. because, as I say, it is a 150-hour study. It might be less if you are perhaps a fund manager and dealing with the maths behind things now. Maybe you'll need less. If you're coming straight off the back of your RO2 and haven't done any advanced qualifications, you might need nearer to that 150 to really ensure you're there. So I would absolutely suggest that now, as soon as you possibly can. J10 textbook, yeah, closely matches AF4. J10 is a great one to put alongside your AF4, absolutely. Because it effectively is very like RO2. It's just got that extra bit more about discretionary fund management and a little bit more about the accounts. It's the company accounts analysis side and looking at all the ratios there that are in the J10. All of that is included in the study guide. So that's certainly what you can look at there. AF4 on the BTS website, it certainly should be. We do have like a part there. As I say, if you sign up to the career zone, you can definitely go down and get onto the AF4 area and look at the study plans very related to that AF4. We are sort of live with taking bookings for the workshops and the actual study guide itself. AF4, the CII study guides don't have the actual subject matter within them at the AF level. The actual technical knowledge you need is within the RO2 and J10, which our study guide has. So what you'll find with the CII AF textbook is it's actually just a lot of case studies. There's a sort of small bit of text, but really it's about just case studies, a lot of which you can get from sort of the actual practice exam papers. So it's absolutely available, but does it cover the content that you need? No, it doesn't. You're very much expected to cover the content of J10 and RO2, which the BTS study guide does. Okay, just scanning through, seeing if I've missed any questions. In fact, we've got a comment from one of the person there that they've got the study guide. Well done, great start there, and they're saying it's brilliant, and thanks for producing the material. So that's good stuff. It is very much, if you're on board, please do sort of follow the BTS on LinkedIn, on everything else. And if you are doing it, best of luck with your exam. Get started as soon as possible, put that effort in, and you'll be on a great area to sort of really do well at this exam. It's tricky, but it's really interesting. It's great stuff, but covers way more than just understanding the basic investments.